This time, I want to share some creative branding for accountants ideas. And here's exactly why I think each of these ideas are so important right now. Way back in the 80s, when I was a little girl and I got my very first proper bank account, I was completely bowled over and delighted because they gave me a paper calendar that I could blue tack up on the wall in my bedroom, and that calendar had ladybirds on it. I truly loved that calendar. And actually, when I think about a whole year, as in the 3 months of 4 rows, I still think of that ladybird calendar on my wall in my bedroom where I grew up. Shoot forward 10 or so years later when I was a student at university for the first time, and the biggest winning over factor that we had amongst us friends with the bank was who was going to give you the biggest interest-free student overdraft. So all of the students I knew moved their bank accounts to go to the bank that provided that. Now, both of these banking tactics were very much of the time that they were happening in. And it's in perfect alignment with the traditional banking practice of getting new customers to remain loyal to a bank so that when they're adults with a significant amount of money, they are a lot more valuable. It should be no surprise then that that same 80s child of the excess era of our economy was then shackled to the bank that she ended up with as a student because she had too much debt, and that was made even worse when the 2008 credit crunch happened. When you look at this little tale through the lens of brand strategy, it should become rapidly clear to you exactly how crucial and important the current preferences and trends of the new customer wave is right now to the financial world. Younger millennials and Generation Z are way more savvy with their finances than I was. In addition to being so much more financially switched on, they have very clear expectations from any financial provider. It's fair to say that they think the idea of putting your shoes on and physically going into a branch is completely ridiculous. Their first question would be, why can't I manage all my money on my phone when I damn well please? They hate speaking to other people for advice. They'd much rather go off and consume lots of different types of content that they know has lots of different types of bias to it, and then maybe talk about it with their friends online before making a more informed decision. And they do this for their whole lives, not just when it comes to money. This new wave is absolutely way more open to new forms of finance and new ideas about money. Trading in Bitcoin or embracing completely new styles of currency is going on right now and has been for a number of years. And changing things up is how they see the future, especially when it comes to their finances. This demographic cares a lot more about the environment in comparison to the boomer generation in particular. In fact, they blame them for the state of the world. And as they are going to have to pick up and handle all of the mess left behind, they want to make sure that they are taking control of the environment in new and different ways. They will apply their political and socio-economic beliefs to every single buying decision that they make. And this is exactly how they want to change the world, by voting with their feet. We are in a time where cancel culture is quite toxic, but it stands to reason that when this generation and new wave of banking customers finds out that a business or celebrity figure has done something against the rules, they will absolutely take action. It's now intrinsic to your identity as a human being in what decisions you make and how you buy and what responsibility you take. It reaffirms your personality, and it also starts to create a certain tribal style of behavior when it comes to buying. And the world of banking has responded dramatically in the last 5 to 10 years, more so than over the last 100 years. I think that the accountants who apply this massive shift into the way that they're building their brand strategy will be the accountants who have major growth and success in the next decade or so. The ones that don't and stick to how things have always been done run a much higher risk of becoming completely irrelevant to this new, more demanding market. And as a result, will become redundant in the marketplace. Let's get your accountancy practice firing on all creative cylinders. So with that little story and those examples mashed together for you, you can see how I've drawn a parallel between the accountancy world and what else is going on in banking and finance right now. That all fits into the world of finance. And like I said, that world is going through significant change right now. This new wave of customers are going to be in charge of the world's finance, quite literally, in the next 30 years. It's time to get creative, accountants of the world. Don't panic. I know that this isn't your comfort zone, so I've wrapped up the idea of getting more creative and some brand strategy principles in a nice, cozy comfort blanket. So we're going to play a game together, and it's all based around scoring numbers. In order to play, all you need is a notepad and pen, or if that's not your jam, you can keep a mental arithmetic note going in your mind, or get a note up on your desktop or phone as this is playing. Let's go. I'd like to do a quick test around your attitude about branding. This is the biggest barrier into entry into new brand strategy that I've witnessed a lot of accountants fall into. So I just want to examine where your mindset is when it comes to branding. I'm going to act out my statements looking like this. If you agree with the statement that I act out as accountant Laura, you can pick the right score that fits how much you agree with that from this scale, which is at the top of the screen. On this side of the scale is a low score, and that means this is not at all how you think. And on this side of the scale is like I just described you and I know you so well. And you've got numbers in between to reflect the level of sentiment that you agree with. You're stuck in 1993. This time was what I like to refer to as my glory days. This is the same sort of era that I use to apply to any creative decision I make now. Choices for my clothing, for my lifestyle, my interior design, and therefore all the creative things that are going on in my life. I know how to be hip in that era because that was when I was at my most hippest in my life so far. Use the scale above to score yourself 0 to 5. Branding is an unnecessary expense. If you're thinking this, firstly, welcome to Moi TV. I think you should probably subscribe. Then you can go ahead and pick out a score from the scale above. Now, I don't think that any of this stuff that you're talking about today, Laura, is halfway near to being as important as the current things going on with the tax legislation and regulation in my country. These things are imposed upon my business by the government. That's way more important, so I'm just going to ignore all this stuff you're talking about today when it comes to branding. Because really, when I'm honest about it, I don't like feeling outside of my comfort zone, and that's exactly where this subject is. I don't like it. How much is this like you? Give yourself a score from 0 to 5. I get all my business from referrals. So really, this is pointless for me. I'd rather just keep getting up at 5 a.m. every Thursday morning and going to my regular business networking breakfast meeting. Even though you're right, it probably is full of much older businesses. If your breakfast networking club is your biggest source of income, then you probably should score yourself with a 5. Apply the right score to how this source of income sits in your business right now. It is unprofessional to put your life all over social media. That's not the way us accountants are. And frankly, I feel a little uneasy you knowing what the names of my dogs are. How do you really feel about being on social media to get more business? Okay, time to do a quick tally up. What did you score from this round? How many of these stifled mindsets are you actually guilty of? You're going to have a score between 0 and 25. Tally things up, make a note of it, and then let's move on. Your reasons to believe. Like I already shared in my little stories at the top of this episode, it's fair to say that the attitude about finance as a general subject has dramatically shifted in our collective consciousness over the last decade. Our buying options are vast, and our options are only increasing from here. Our knowledge and access to more knowledge is much easier to acquire, and acquiring that is becoming more sophisticated by the second. Our consciousness and ethics is starting to play a bigger role in how we use our money. And in fact, it's fair to say that applied to the increased options that we have helps us to cut through the noise when we're making decisions about spending money. It also makes us feel proud to be even more vocal in a political sense and an ethical sense as a global society. When we receive a bad experience, we are very vocal about it. No longer do we just complain about it to our friends and family. We will go online and create an international and permanent record of what vexed us about that bad service provider. For me, as a proud feminist, I was delighted when I had the option to vote with my feet and move all of my banking to female-owned and led bank Starling. I actually felt excited about making this change, even though it would mean that I had quite a lot of administrative work to do around the business finances. However, that being said, I knew that in the long run, my entire monthly bookkeeping process was going to be a lot more rapid. So I felt like this was a fair trade-off for me. It's natural, therefore, to apply this to how we think about finding the right accountant. We are going to be turned on in a big way when we find an accountant who has similar ethos and outlook on life as us. For me, a big draw to moving my accountant from the last person to who I'm with now was that the entire operation was 100% paperless. And it was really doing my head in that my old bookkeeper and accountant insisted on my printing everything out and mailing or meeting up with them to give them receipts. I didn't like the environmental impact of that. So when I found this accountant who I got on well with and I knew everything was entirely paperless, it sealed the decision for me. So you can see there with my little example, with my little business, how my ethical attitude to life actually affected my buying decision on picking which accountant I wanted to work with. And I'm just one of 5.94 million small businesses here in the UK. As a much more comfortable with maths accountant watching this, you're going to be able to extrapolate what I've just said into likelihood and figures that affect your business and how you should maybe be thinking about updating your branding strategy. Let's just take a beat then together and start thinking about the morals and ethics and ethos of your business. You might want to apply how you see the world as a human being as well in this current era. What is genuinely close to your heart? What do you really care about? And then can you start thinking about how these ideas might begin to inform a new angle on your branding? If something just popped straight away into your head and you've written an idea down, go ahead and give yourself a 0. If you came up with 3 different things that you could run with, I want you to give yourself a -5. If you've just sat there and watched that and thought, yeah, nice, Laura, totally pointless, not going to bother thinking about that, then I want you to go ahead and try a little bit harder to think about what you genuinely care about as a human being in this era. And if you're still coming up with nothing, I want you to go ahead and give yourself a big fat 20. Tally up your score. You should have a score between -5 and 45. What you just wrote down there, if you wrote anything down, is actually a fundamental framework that you can use as part of your branding strategy. In the biz, we'd refer to this as your reasons to believe. And it means just that. Why should someone believe what you stand for, and why should someone believe in what you're saying as an accountancy brand on the market? This is a core fundamental part of brand strategy, and let me tell you honestly that very few accountancy firms in your area have even begun to think about applying this to the way that they're showing up in the marketplace. Simply having anything in this category of your brand strategy will probably put you in the top 1% of accountancy firms in your local area. If you're watching this today and you're not an accountant or bookkeeper, then I want you to think about sharing this episode with your accountant or bookkeeper. You can do that really quickly by hitting this button below the screen right now. And then YouTube is going to give you this option. You can pick the first one and copy the link and blast over an email with a link to it telling them that you think they should watch it. Or if your accountant is too cool for school and you're actually in a bit of a DM relationship with them, you can pick to share this episode with any of the social prompts that YouTube gives you. I cannot wait to see what they think. Data is your friend. One of the biggest misconceptions about branding is that it's all based on airy-fairy creative ideas, flights of creative fancy. In fact, the exact opposite is true. All of the discovery phase of a brand strategy project is about accumulating hard data. And it's from this hard data that a creative framework is built on top of it. Everything is based on facts. And a good brand strategist does this to rigor test any new ideas and check that the brand that's being built is fit for purpose and that it will return on investment. If you know that you have accurate and current data from either a competitor audit, a brand positioning exercise, or from researching and then interviewing your niche customer avatar, then you can give yourself a -2. So potentially you're going to get -6 points here, 2 for each of the 3 things I mentioned. If you've only got 1, it's -2 for you. If you've got none of these things in place, you get 10 points. Oh, and by the way, by current, I mean that this data was researched within the last 12 months. Tally up your score. You're going to have between -11 and 55. Your exit plan. Have you got an exit plan in place for your accountancy business? If yes, you get a 0. If no, give yourself 7. Branding strategy done well yields a return on your investment over a number of years. It's really important that you apply this slow appreciation into your expenditure forecasting spreadsheet that you have. I know you hate to spend money, and part of that is probably fueled by seeing different clients spending willy-nilly on all manner of crazy marketing activities that sometimes don't work. For me, branding should actually sit in its own row, separate to marketing. It's different in a financial sense because of this appreciation factor. You can also use this spreadsheet to start getting a good understanding of how much equity is in your business. What is your business actually worth? And part of figuring out that equity is understanding what your brand equity is. And the value of that is going to be significantly higher if you figured out a proper brand strategy. This is a key sum to work out for yourself, especially if your exit plan is to sell your business on when you're ready to leave. You are a creative rock star. Which bit of creativity works for you? You can't say none of it, but I'm willing to bet if you start thinking about this in a slightly different way, we're going to figure out what really gives you creative sparks. Maybe you love music, maybe you're a massive movie fan, or maybe you really identify as a foodie and going out for a tasting menu experience is something that just fills you with creative sparks. Creativity doesn't have to be centered around graphic design when it comes to your branding. Can you list out 3 different areas of your life, could be hobbies or interests, that give you creative sparks? It would be this place that I would be looking to get some creative direction from you if we were working together on your branding strategy. If you can write them all down, you've got 3, give yourself a 0. If you've thought about this and really you can only think of 2, give yourself 2 points. If you can only think of 1, add 4 to your overall score now. If you can't think of any and you're totally stumped, try a little harder to think about what puts a smile on your face and if there's any creative impetus behind that. If you're still drawing a blank after trying really hard, add 5 points onto your score. What does your final score mean? After you tally up your full score, you should be looking at a number that sits between -11 and 67. If you got -11 to 0, then you are probably more savvy about branding than the rest of your competition. You either have a really well thought out brand that is working well for you to build your business, or you already have the framework of what you want your brand to end up becoming. You might need some help to implement these ideas into a working strategy though. If you got 0 to 20, something's holding you back from the level of success you want and deserve. Go back through where you scored the highest numbers in today's quiz. This is probably going to be a really good indicator to you about where your biggest branding barrier currently is. I want you to tell me what it is in a quick DM. If you scored 21 to 40, then honey, we need to talk. How did you accrue this score? You might have some really broken areas in your brand strategy, and when we fix them, it's going to put you instantly back on track. Or you might see that the scores have slowly accumulated and built up in all of the areas we've covered today. Work this out and then get in touch with me and tell me what your score was in a quick DM. If you got 41 to 67, then you are in trouble when it comes to your branding. Remember those businesses I talked about who would fade away and become irrelevant in the next 30 years? Your brand is one of the brands I was talking about. Take a beat to seriously think about what your exit plan is going to be. Is fading away actually an okay option for your business plan? If yes, then just keep on doing what you're doing. If you want to change, then I would love you to connect with me. You can share your results with me below in the comments. Or you might prefer to keep it private. If that's the case, please do feel free to send me a connection request with this detail in your note on that connection request over on LinkedIn. You might have gone through this and thought, right, I need to get serious about my brand strategy and I want to talk to Laura in a one-to-one way. If that's you, I'd like to personally invite you to come and book yourself in for a cyber cocktail. To do that, you can head to www.laurapearman.com/cyber-cocktail. Pick out the best date and time for you, and then you can book yourself in. This is a free 30-minute chat where we can have an initial conversation with each other. It's absolutely no obligation to then enter into a sales conversation, so don't be panicked about that if you're considering booking this now. If you've enjoyed getting more creative branding tips for your accountancy practice, then I'm willing to bet you're going to enjoy these episodes up next. I'll see you next time. Mwah! Now, before you go anywhere, don't forget to subscribe. Mwah!